traders, how are you? We're here. We can't wake up. We can't wake up money. So today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Well, if we wake them up by accident, then we wake them up by accident. Overall, for the week, we have a lot of interesting things that happen. For example, if you guys remember, I talked about the blackouts that some governments are advising their citizens start to prepare. China now has an advisory to be able to stock up on some necessities, and we even have a situation at the end. I'll tell you guys in the about the natural disasters that I started adding to the videos about how NASA is planning to send an aircraft to crash against an asteroid for planetary defense purposes, which is something interesting. Overall, for the week, the markets in the U.S., very, very positive. All three of the major exchanges, which is the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500, reached record highs. On the S&P 500, we had a growth rate of earnings of 36.6%, which is a third highest since 2010. So obviously, all the companies are making money. It doesn't matter if you and I make money. As long as they make money, it's all good, right? European markets mostly higher as well, with Istanbul there taking the crown for the most positive. Latin American and Canada, not Canada, but Canada, if you guys that are following me, the joke from a few weeks ago, Canada went up 1.96%, mostly positive in Latin America. And then in the Middle East, Egypt taking the crown, most positive of them all. And then in the far, far east, we have the Philippines with plus 4.05% for the week. Lots of news in cryptos and Bitcoin. Fresh record high to the moon. Bitcoin, fresh record high, 66,975. Obviously, this has to do with the ETF approval. For the week, it did go down 2.59% and went down to about 60,000. Remember when it hit the record high, I think about 2 weeks ago or so. Australia's top regulator is now saying that they're going to approve a Bitcoin ETF as well. And then we have the mayors of Miami, which want to receive their salary with Bitcoin. And the new mayor of New York says that he wants to receive his first 3 checks in Bitcoin as well. Squid Game, which is one of the shit coins, basically. Excuse me for being vulgar, but that's what they call them. There's more than 13,000 cryptos out there. And one of the most recently popular ones, let's say, which is Squid Game, from Not Honored. I just did the Spanish video, so I'm always thinking in Spanish now instead of English, which was made in regards to the famous program on Netflix called Squid Game. If you guys remember, last week it went up like 800 or 700%, something along those lines. Well, it went down to 0. So that's why I always tell you guys to be careful in the cryptos you invest in. Obviously, like anything else, you can make a lot of money, but you can lose a lot of money if you don't do things the right way. They're now calling the creators of the Squid Game crypto scammers because they ended up stealing about $2.1 million from investors. And it surged to almost $3. Kroger is the next big chain. If you guys remember, Walmart last week talked about how they were going to start accepting Bitcoin. And Kroger, which is the largest U.S. grocery retailer, I should say, announced on Friday that they're going to start accepting Bitcoin Cash, which is something that's interesting. And you guys ready? You guys ready for the Shiba? With Shiba shitcoin news, let me look at the results here. Not that I invested in the Shiba shitcoin, but just to look at the results. It was definitely negative this week. Overall, it looks about 7 or 6%, depending on the day that you look at it. In commodities, one of the things that I talked to you guys about last week was obviously the blackouts, right? We have the governments of China and Austria, which are advising, quote unquote, their citizens of a potential blackout this winter. The minister of Austria actually stated that it was all but inevitable. He said that it's not when it's going to happen. It's literally, he said, excuse me, let me backtrack. Not if it's going to happen, but when it happens. And so if it's not some kind of, the World Economic Forum, for example, and the documentation that you guys can find online, wrote a paper, let's say in 2019 before the pandemic, about what would happen, or an exercise on the actual pandemic, right? We're talking about I don't want to say the word because then I'll get censored on YouTube. They already took down one of the channels. So they did another paper talking about a potential cyber attack where they would need to shut down the entire electrical grid to be able to go ahead and get rid of it. So that is another coincidence, right? They predicted the pandemic in 2019 with the exercise paper that they wrote, and now they're writing about a potential cyber pandemic. Now, outside of that, let's call that just a conspiracy theory, right? Let's just put that over here in this room. If we talk now about the governments of China, or excuse me, the governments of Germany and Austria talking about a potential blackout and giving their citizens, let's say, recommendations about what they should have. If you guys remember last week, I also talked to you guys about the electric company from the Iberia Peninsula, which is Portugal and Spain's electric operator, basically. They were doing tests on a potential outage, whether it was a partial or complete outage. Well, now we have China urging their citizens to be able to stock up on daily necessities ahead of winter. So you guys see, I've been in this business now for about 21 years. This year coming up will be year 21. And my mind has been trained because of the financial markets and trading everything to be able to read patterns. And outside of the conspiracy theories and all this stuff, I've never heard governments before, one by one, it seems, advise their citizens about, stocking up for the winter or a potential blackout, et cetera, et cetera. So let's put all that back over here in the conspiracy theory box, right? Well, last week I talked to you guys about the generation of electricity. In the United States, I believe about 55% is based on fossil fuels, whether that's natural gas, coal, oil, any of these things. In a country like Colombia, for example, we have about 33%. Mexico's 55%. Europe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe is 50 as well. And so if we have this huge production chain situation where we can't find products or they're delayed, this is happening everywhere, it seems. Well, what happens if they can't get the fossil fuels where they need to for the electrical grid? This is already happening. So U.S. coal miners, according to an article on Zero Hedge, for example, which is one of the only sites that I recommend because it seems like a lot of other sites are mostly political, right? They're reporting that the U.S. coal miners are all sold out of their coal in 2002, 2023. And this is because there was a huge demand increase due to the fact that the natural gas prices exploded. If you guys remember, in Europe, the natural gas went up to what would be an equivalent of $230 a barrel of oil. So now instead of people looking for natural gas, they switch to coal. Coal goes up, and now all the coal literally is sold for next year and the following year. Now remember that the United States is the fourth largest producer of coal in the world, right? China and India are number 1 and number 2 respectively, and they're opening what seems like a factory or 2 every week of coal. Colombia reported on one of their major newspapers down here in Spanish that the winter rains has slowed down the carbon production, or the coal production, I should say, and they're the 12th largest producer of coal in the world. So we have the conspiracy theories about the World Economic Forum putting out a paper and then it actually happening, and now they're saying what could happen again. Then we have the governments of China, Austria, and Germany talking about this as well. And then Spain, the electrical operator, doing these tests about a partial or complete outage. I don't know about you, but it might be a good idea to go to Costco or Sam's Club and just, get those. Here in Colombia, I went to what's called Price Smart, which is the same company as Costco, and you can get these cans that last for 5 years. Get some tuna, get some salmon, get some chicken, get some fruits and veggies. If you get them now, nothing happens, all good. If something does happen, it might actually save your life. So I just think there's too many, but let's just keep it in the conspiracy theory box. Other than that, price of pasta is going up quite a bit. In Alberta, which is one of the states, one of the regions in Canada, wheat prices have gone up by 70%, 70. So that obviously is how they make pasta, from wheat and grains, right? And so get ready for more increase in food. And in addition to that, crude oil has spiked about 64% from year over year. Bank of America is expecting that Brent crude, which is the one in the United States, could go up to $120 a barrel. Excuse me, Brent isn't the United States one, it's the international crude. And for the week, crude went down by 2.83% to 81.27, while the international, which is called Brent, went down 1.18%, which is 82.74. Precious metals moving on up. If you guys remember, I can't give you trading advice or investing advice or legal advice or any kind of advice because I don't have the right permissions and everything. But if you guys remember, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I talked to you guys about gold and silver. My favorite miner went up, I think already 30 or 40%. I'm just saying. Gold went up 1.88% to just over 1,810, while silver went up just over 1% to 24.25. Now, the actual movement of these commodities isn't that much, but the miners, especially the junior miners, which are companies that are smaller, have smaller mining operations, are a lot more volatile. So you get into one of these and you can get it for, I think one of my entries was $3.40, I think it was, if I remember correctly, and it's already at $5.20, just to kind of give you guys an example. Obviously, you have to do your research, right? As with anything, like cryptos, for example, you can make a lot of money, but you can lose a lot of money as well. Other than that, we have a situation in financial and banking news where the Fed, which is the central bank in the United States, will begin reducing. They announced their quantitative easing, which was basically their injection of stimulus into the economy that started during COVID. We should say started in 2009 crisis, which never ended really. But they're doing about $120 billion a month right now, and they're stating that they're going to slow it by $15 billion a month. So they're going to go from 120, for example, to 105. They're going to reduce it every month by 15 billion, which means that the QE or the stimulus, let's say, of the economy should end by the middle of 2022. We'll see how well the economy is doing then, because I don't suspect it's going to be doing very well, which means they're probably going to have to put in another round of stimulus to be able to help the economy. Political news, U.S. President Joe Biden's domestic agenda suffered a major setback after the Democratic Joe Manchin, which is from West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, said that he would not support the $1.75 trillion framework in social spending and climate change. He remained skeptical about free preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds. They also wanted to include the expansion of home care, elderly home care, in addition for tax credits for companies investing in clean energy sources. And the original package was $3.5 trillion, and they dropped a lot of the progressives' priorities, which was paid family leave benefits and also climate control provisions. They also lost the state of Virginia, the U.S. Commonwealth of Virginia, when Republican Glenn Youngkin won the race as governor, along with a lot of Republican winning statewide elections. This means that basically the agenda that Biden and the Democrats wanted to implement, it's going to become a little bit more difficult now. And some are saying that this is a sign of the way that the country is going to go in the 2022 midterms. And again, just want to remind you, I'm not going to get political about what's right, what's wrong. I'm just reporting to you guys what actually happened, because obviously this is important, because part of the reason why we have the inflation is the significant increase in the amount of money that they're injecting into the financial system. I'll just give you an example. 40% of the dollars that were in the financial system didn't exist before COVID. Coincidence that housing prices have gone up by over 30%? Right? So the more money, the more debt that they inject, and the more money, because more than I think 60 or 80% of the budget in the United States is actually debt, the more problems we're going to have with cost, because the inflation is going to get out of control. Economic news, China's official manufacturing purchaser managers index, which is the PMI for the second consecutive month, it went down, which isn't a good sign, because remember that China is the second largest economy in the world. U.S. jobless claims are dropping to a pandemic low of 269,000 in the 7 days ending in October 30th. This doesn't necessarily have to do with people not necessarily looking for work, but it's because of the worker shortage. If you guys remember, because of the stimulus that the government did because of COVID. I said it, now they're going to censor me. because of the pandemic, there's a situation. I'll ask the guys that maybe cut that out. But there's a situation where people can't find workers because of the stimulus that the government is giving everybody, right? The additional benefits. And so there's a situation where a lot of companies are not going to lay off or fire people because they're not going to be able to find people to replace them, basically. The U.S. added 531,000 jobs in October as well. The unemployment rate went down to 4.6%, which is exceeding economists' expectations. And in corporate news, Elon Musk is increasing his lead of the richest man in the world. I'll give you guys the exact number, but I think it's $140 billion richer than Jeff Bezos after Tesla surged almost 9% to a record high on announcing that their supercharger and their charger stations in Netherlands are doing a pilot to be able to open them up to people outside of Tesla, because before only the Tesla owners could go to the charging network, So they're doing a pilot in the Netherlands, testing 10 supercharger stations to be able to open that up to other electric vehicles. In addition to that, they launched a new program in China where people can get a Tesla vehicle with no down payment, which obviously means more sales as well for them. Shares of Zillow, which is the online real estate marketplace, collapsed almost 9% after they reported billions of dollars in losses. They are on I have the number here somewhere. They lost about $2 billion over the last few years actually buying and selling homes. So now, and basically flipping real estate. And they're basically now on the opposite side of the market because the market isn't doing as well anymore. And now they're stuck with over $2.8 billion in houses that they need to sell. Shares of Avis became the new meme stock after it tripled at one point after posting really good financials that exceeded expectations. This obviously also points to a solid demand for rentals, which is something that's not necessarily good for the economy overall, but good for Avis. Moderna is down 31.77% in the last 3 months after they missed revenue forecast. They only made $5 billion only in quarter three, 20% lower than what was expected, which was $6.2 billion. And in trade news, we have a Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, which was signed last year with a lot of Southeast Asia and Asia countries. This was signed last year and it's going to become effective in January of 2022. It covers over 30% of the population in the world and also 30% of the economic output. We're talking about 2.2 billion people. Widely seen as a geopolitical victory for China at a time when the United States and its influence in the Asia-Pacific region is increasingly going down due to the fact of the rise of China and also other countries like India, for example. In technology, for the first time, DNA extracted from Sitting Bull scalp lock, which was one of the legendary leaders of the Lakota indigenous tribe in the United States. For the first time, they were able to match the DNA of a deceased individual with a live individual to prove that he was the great-grandson of the legendary leader. And it's pretty cool because obviously they used the new technology that actually can read the DNA between the two. And also an international team of scientists using ground-based Gemini Observatory in Chile were able to detect the amount of water and carbon monoxide in an atmosphere of another solar system, of a planet in another solar system 340 light years away. If you guys didn't know, the Atacama Desert in Chile is the driest place in the world. So they have a lot of telescopes there because it's a lot easier to be able to see into space. And in international events, leaders of France, Germany, the UK, and the United States reiterated their commitment to not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon after a meeting was held in Rome to discuss the risks about international security as their nuclear program is escalating. U.S. State Department approved the first arms sales to Saudi Arabia under Biden. 280 air-to-air missiles valued at $650 million. And in unusual facts, Elon Musk, he's worth now $335.1 billion. His net worth rose by $24 billion after Tesla's stock skyrocketed. He's $143 billion richer than Jeff Bezos, which was the founder of Amazon. And just to give you some perspective, Warren Buffett, for example, is the 10th richest man in the world now. He's worth $104.1 billion. And an international team of researchers at the University of Winnipeg, which is in Canada, announced the naming of a new species of a human ancestor called Homo bodoensis. Species lived in in Africa about 500,000 years ago and is the direct ancestor of modern humans. And in natural disasters, there was an apocalyptic hailstorm which killed 450 ostriches in South Africa. Also, another unprecedented ice deluge in Bolivia, which dropped 3 feet of hail. And one of the things that I found most interesting was that NASA is planning to crash a spacecraft traveling at 15,000 miles per hour, about 24,000 kilometers per hour, against an asteroid next year to, quote unquote, test planetary defense. Coincidence? I think not. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Bye.